My name is Elena Meyers. I'm 32 years old, a single mom raising my 8-year-old son, Dylan, in a quiet suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer. Most days, I'm hunched over my laptop while Dylan builds Lego cities on the living room floor. My life is simple, predictable, and safe. At least, that's what I used to think. But some things have a way of finding you, no matter how far you try to run. I inherited something from my mother, a strange sensitivity, something I never fully understood. When I was a child, sometimes when I touched people, I saw flashes of their memories. My mother called it a gift. My father called it a curse. After my mother died, I buried it deep inside me. I decided I would never feel those flashes again. Until that day. It was a hot, bright afternoon in July. I walked up the steps of St. Paul Regional Hospital, carrying a paper bag filled with fruit and a new set of pajamas for Dylan. He was recovering from a routine appendectomy, and I was told he'd be discharged today. The sun was strong, heating up the concrete steps. By the time I reached the reception desk, the back of my blouse was sticking to my skin. Good afternoon. I'm here to see Dylan Meyers. He was in room 17. The woman behind the glass looked bored as she tapped on her keyboard. Room 17 is being renovated, she said. Your son's been moved. Check with the nurse on the second floor. That felt strange. I had visited Dylan the night before and everything was normal. My stomach tightened, but I smiled and thanked her before going upstairs. The second floor felt empty. Room 17 was now bare. No bed, no charts. Just a man measuring the walls for painting. Excuse me, I asked, do you know where the boy in this room was moved? He shook his head. No idea. I'm just the painter. I walked into the hallway, looking for someone, anyone, who could help. Finally, a young nurse appeared, pushing a cart of supplies. Her name tag said Olivia. Excuse me. I'm looking for my son, Dylan Meyers. He was moved from room 17. She checked her tablet. Ah, yes. He's being prepared for discharge. They moved him to room 3 on the 3rd floor so the doctor could sign off before release. I hesitated. Room 3? 3rd floor. She nodded quickly. Yes. Doctor's orders. Your things were already taken there. I thanked her and started up the stairs, but the way she rushed off made me feel uneasy. The 3rd floor felt different. Quieter. A sign on the wall read, Intensive Care Unit, Authorized Personnel Only. That didn't make sense. Why would Dylan be in ICU? I saw a man in scrubs pushing some equipment. Where is room 3? I asked. He scratched his head. Room 3? Down that hallway. But I'm new here. Best to double-check. I followed the hallway until I saw a door slightly open. Inside, I heard the faint beeping of medical monitors. Something told me this wasn't right. But I stepped inside anyway. The room was dim and smelled like disinfectant and something heavier. Silence. Only one bed was occupied. A woman I didn't recognize was lying there. She looked to be middle-aged, with silver streaks in her hair spread across the pillow like a halo. Her skin was pale, and her face calm. But something about her felt familiar, even though I didn't know why. I should have left, but I didn't. I was drawn to her. My hand moved on its own until my fingertips touched her palm. And then everything changed. For a moment, I wasn't in the hospital. I was standing beside a shimmering lake, sunlight bouncing off the water. A blue-painted house stood by the shore. It had carved railings on a wide porch. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, staring into the distance like he was waiting for someone. The vision vanished in an instant. I gasped and stumbled back, heart racing. I hadn't had a flash like that in over 20 years. I had no idea why it happened now, or why with her. Excuse me. A man's voice startled me. I turned. A doctor stood in the doorway. His white coat, grey-streaked hair, and serious eyes told me he was someone used to emergencies. He looked at me, then at the monitors, then back at me. Suspicion showed on his face. "This is the intensive care unit," he said. "How did you even get in here?" I was told my son was moved here," I said, nervous. "Room 3. He frowned. "There must have been a mix-up. This is a restricted area. No visitors unless cleared by staff." I stepped back, embarrassed. My hand still tingled from where it had touched the woman. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." He looked past me toward the bed. "What were you doing with her?" "I just touched her hand," I said quietly. "I thought she might be alone." His face softened a little. He moved closer to check the monitors and adjust some wires on the woman's chest. "Her name is Margaret Reynolds. We call her Maggie. She's been here 2 weeks. Completely unresponsive." "What happened to her?" I asked. "She was found near Silver Pines Lake during a thunderstorm. Witnesses said she'd been out painting by the water. Lightning hit a tree nearby. When paramedics arrived, she was unconscious. No burns, no injuries, but no response either. Her vitals are stable. Brain activity's there, but something's blocking it." Silver Pines Lake. The name made me shiver. It sounded like the place in the vision. "Does she have family?" The doctor, his name tag said Dr. Michael Hargrove, shook his head. "No ID on her. Just some paintbrushes and a satchel of art supplies. Police are still trying to figure out who she is." I hesitated, then whispered, "I saw something when I touched her. A blue house. Right by the water." Dr. Hargrove straightened. His eyes narrowed. "You saw something." I almost lied. But something told me to tell the truth. It felt like I was there. Like it was her memory. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of the monitor. He studied me. I couldn't tell if he thought I was lying or saying something he didn't know how to explain. "You're telling me you have some kind of intuition about patients?" "No," I said quickly, then paused. "At least not usually. It hasn't happened since I was a kid." He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, whatever you think you saw, keep it to yourself. Families hang on to hope. If you give them false hope, it can break them. Understand?" "I'm not trying to give false hope," I said softly. "But she doesn't feel gone. It's like she's stuck somewhere in between." He looked at me for a long time, like he was deciding whether I was crazy or honest. Finally, he said, "If you notice anything unusual, come to me directly. No one else." He wrote something on the chart, then stepped aside. "Your son isn't here. He's downstairs, room 32, a different wing. Someone gave you the wrong information." "Thank you," I murmured, still shaken. I glanced back at the woman in the bed. Margaret Reynolds. She looked peaceful, like she might wake up at any moment if someone just called her name. I didn't know why, but I felt drawn to her. As I left the room, one thought stayed with me. That vision wasn't random. Something about her was reaching out to me. Or maybe I was the one reaching for her. That night, after Dylan had gone to bed, I sat on the porch of my father's house. The sky over St. Paul was clear, and the quiet sound of cicadas buzzed in the background. My father, Samuel Mayers, sat across from me. He was carving a thin strip of leather into a shape only he could imagine. He'd been a leather craftsman for decades. His hands were rough, his movements slow and careful. He looked up when he noticed me staring into space. "Something's on your mind," he said as I waited, unsure how to tell him what had happened at the hospital. But I could never hide much from him. He had a way of waiting quietly, letting silence do most of the work. "I touched someone today," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A woman in a coma. And when I did, I saw things. Memories that weren't mine. A house by a lake. A man in the doorway. It felt real, Dad. Too real. He stopped cutting. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he sighed and set the leather aside. So it's back. I frowned. What's back? He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Your mother had the same thing. That sensitivity. She could touch people and see parts of their lives. Sometimes even things that hadn't happened yet. She called it a blessing. I called it a curse. It wore her down. Elena. She couldn't turn it off. I swallowed hard. I remembered my mother as gentle but always a little distant, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. You think I'm like her? I know you are, he said softly. You've always felt things too deeply. That's why I taught you to keep your hands to yourself with strangers. I hoped if you ignored it long enough, it would go away. I thought it had, I said. Until today. He looked at me with those worn grey eyes that had seen more loss than most people could handle. You don't have to do this, Elena. You don't owe that woman anything. You have Dylan to think about. Your life is finally steady. But that was the thing. Ever since I touched Margaret Reynolds's hand, I hadn't stopped thinking about her. That blue house by the lake kept coming back in my mind. It felt like she wasn't gone, just lost somewhere between memory and darkness. I can't ignore it, I said finally. What if she's trying to find her way back? What if I can help her? My father leaned back and rubbed his jaw. Your mother thought the same way. She tried to help too many people. And in the end. His voice trailed off. I saw grief in his eyes. I reached over and took his hand. I'm not Mom, Dad. I'm not going to let this destroy me. But if I can use this to help someone, shouldn't I try? He looked at me for a long time, then squeezed my hand. Just promise me one thing. Don't lose yourself in it. Help her if you must, but remember, you have a son who needs you in the here and now. I promise. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me. Not just the gift, but purpose. I didn't know what Margaret Reynolds meant to me, or why I had been drawn to her. But I knew I couldn't walk away. And deep down, I felt this was just the beginning. I woke up before dawn the next morning, long before Dylan's alarm would go off. I hadn't slept well. My dreams were full of broken flashes of that house by the lake. I saw every detail. The blue paint, the carved porch rails, the old mailbox leaning slightly to one side. When I opened my eyes, I knew where I had to go. Mom, why are we up so early? Dylan asked as I packed his backpack with snacks and water. We're taking a little trip, I said gently. I need to check on something for work. It wasn't the full truth, but telling an 8-year-old about psychic visions before breakfast didn't seem like a good idea. By mid-morning, our car was rolling down a quiet country road that followed the curves of Silver Pines Lake. The water sparkled in the sun, with fishermen and a few kayakers gliding across it. Dylan pressed his face to the window, wide-eyed. Whoa! Can we go swimming later? Maybe, I said, though I was focused on the GPS. When we turned onto Lakeside Drive, I saw it. The exact house from my vision. 2 stories. Blue paint. White trim. Carved porch railings that curled like vines. I couldn't breathe for a second. Dylan whispered, Mom, you look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that, I said quietly. Before I could knock, the door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, broad shoulders. Dark hair messy from sleep. A bit of stubble on his face. His eyes looked tired and guarded. Can I help you? His voice was deep, with a hard edge, like someone who had been through too much. I cleared my throat, suddenly aware of how strange this looked. A woman showing up with a kid, uninvited. Are you Ethan Reynolds? He frowned. Yeah. Who's asking? My name is Elena Mayers. Yesterday I was at St. Paul Regional Hospital. In the ICU. Your mother, Margaret Reynolds, she's there. Ethan froze. His hands gripped the porch rail. My mom? Are you sure? I nodded. She was brought in 2 weeks ago. Unresponsive. After a lightning strike. Near this lake. His face went pale. He stepped back, shaking his head, trying to understand. I thought she was out of town. Visiting a friend. When she didn't answer my calls, I don't know what I thought. Why didn't the hospital call me? They didn't have her ID when she was admitted, I said softly. No phone. No wallet. They've been listing her as unidentified. He cursed under his breath and ran his hands through his hair. I filed a missing person report last week, and nobody told me she was lying in a hospital bed this whole time. His voice broke. I felt his pain. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. She's alive, Ethan. Stable. And I think she's trying to come back. I know how this sounds. But when I touched her hand, I saw her memories. I saw this house. He stared at me. At first, there was disbelief in his eyes. But behind that, something softer. A small spark of hope. One he didn't want to believe in yet. What had a vision? I nodded once. I can't explain it, but I know she's reaching for something. Familiar. For home. For you. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was Dylan shifting nervously behind me, whispering, Mom, is he okay? Ethan exhaled sharply and looked away, blinking hard. I'm okay, kid. Just shocked. He finally met my eyes again. Take me to her, please. Within an hour, Ethan sat silently in the passenger seat while Dylan hummed quietly in the back. His hands stayed, clenched, knuckles white, and I could feel the storm of emotions rolling off him. Fear, guilt, hope, disbelief. You said she's stable, he finally asked. Yes, no physical injuries, but she hasn't woken up yet. He nodded slowly. Mom always did crazy things when storms rolled in. She said she could feel energy in the air, like it whispered to her brushes. I told her she'd get herself hurt one day. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Guess I was right. When we reached the hospital, Ethan hesitated at the ICU door, bracing himself like a man about to face his own judgment. I touched his arm lightly. She's still your mother, Ethan. Whatever happens next, she's fighting. I can feel it. He swallowed hard and nodded. Let's go. The ICU felt colder that day, like the air conditioning had been turned up too high. Ethan paused in the doorway, staring at his mother as if he didn't quite believe she was real. She lay still, her silver-streaked hair fanned over the pillow, her hands pale and unmoving against the white sheets. Mom! His voice cracked. He stepped closer but stopped short, almost afraid to touch her. Dr. Hargrove appeared behind us, scanning his clipboard. You must be her son. Ethan nodded stiffly. Ethan Reynolds. The doctor offered a hand, but kept his tone clinical. Your mother's vitals are good, but she hasn't regained consciousness. No physical damage we can find, but her neural pathways aren't responding as expected. It's unusual. Unusual? Ethan repeated, his jaw tightening. The doctor hesitated. She's not brain dead. And there's no trauma, but it's as if her mind is elsewhere, trapped. He glanced at me. Which brings us back to you, Ms. Mayers. Yesterday, after you touched her hand, we recorded the first fluctuation in her neural activity in over 2 weeks. Small, but measurable. Ethan turned sharply to me. What does that mean? I hesitated, feeling suddenly exposed under their eyes. It means when I touched her, I saw something, a memory, and her body reacted. Dr. Harrow folded his arms. We can explain it, but I'd like to see if it happens again under supervision this time. Ethan looked at me with skepticism and hope, battling for control. If you think it can help, I took a slow breath and nodded. I'll try. The room went quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. I stepped closer to the bed, my fingertips trembling slightly. Hi, Margaret, I whispered, though she couldn't respond. It's me again, Elena. I reached for her hand, warm but limp, and let my fingers wrap gently around hers. And then everything changed. Suddenly, I was standing in a sunlit yard. A little girl with honeycombed hair swung her legs from the porch steps, clutching a wooden horse carved from pale birch. A man knelt in front of her, tall, broad, his hands stained with sawdust. She squealed with delight, throwing her arms around his neck, whispering, "Thank you," over and over. The scene dissolved like smoke. Now she was 12, clutching a sketchbook at summer camp. Her voice soft and uncertain as she explained her drawings. The other kids laughed behind her, teasing her for her small-town accent. But one camp counselor knelt, pointing at her sketches. "You have talent, Margaret. Real talent." That kindness wrapped around her like sunlight after rain. The vision shifted again. Rain fell on a summer evening, blurring street lights into watercolor streaks.